Erev Tov, good evening, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
We are so lucky to be able to be together tonight for Kabbalat Shabbat with our song leader, with our youth choir for the first time since Purim of 2020. It's been a long time since we've had their voices in our sanctuary. For those of you who are streaming our service and are going, what are you talking about? They're right under the camera. So you will hear them and you'll see Miss Rachel conducting them, but you're not going to be able to see their lovely faces, but you'll hear their voices. And we're going to hear their voices now as they lead us on page 12 in our copies of Mishkan Tefillah. Page 12 as they lead us in L'chuna Ranana. Page 12. We can turn in our prayer books to page 2. Page 2 and 3 for the blessing of our Sabbath lights. We are blessed this weekend to have a bat mitzvah, Ella Friedman. And we're going to ask her and her parents to join us up on the bima as she leads us in our candle blessing on page 2. If you have not yet lit your candles at home, we invite you to do so now as we join in that prayer together. As soon as Ella gets on the bima, eventually, getting there. Pages 2 and 3.
As the Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we in our own day be among these who kindle light. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlikner shel Shabbat. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, sovereign of the universe, who hallows us with mitzvot, commanding us to kindle the lights of Shabbat.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Mazel tov on the day tomorrow, and we're looking forward to sharing the bima with you and to having you lead services. We turn to page 20 as we welcome Shabbat like a bride, like a queen, with the singing of Lecha Dodi, verses 1, 5, and 9, rising on the last verse to greet the Sabbath bride. Again, you can find Lecha Dodi on page 20.
La 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 la
Let's remain standing as we turn to page 28. Page 28 for the Baruch Hu.
Are you listening to my prayer? Can you hear my voice? Can you understand? Am I awake? Am I prepared?
We can be seated, except for the youth choir, who are going to lead us on page 30 in Ma'ariv, more specifically, Roll into Dark, as soon as they have their books back open. And on page 32, we are reminded of God's love for us and our love for God as we join in singing Ahavat Olam. Again, page 32. We rise now for the Shema. Be seated. We turn to page 40 and we turn to that song that we sang on Freedom's Shore as we join together in singing Mi Chamocha on page 40.
חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני, גאל ישראל.
Amen. We give thanks for the night and its rest, and the promise of peace that it brings as we join in singing Hashkivenu on page 42 in our prayer books. Page 44 for Vishamra.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם בריתם ושמרו. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ. Join us. ושמרו בני ישראל ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם בריתם ושמרו. וביום השביעי שבת, שבת וינפש. ושמרו בני ישראל ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם בריתם ושמרו.
Physically, spiritually, we rise for the Amidah.
Adonai sifatai tiftach ufia ki tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanorah, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'Konei Hakol, V'Zocher Chasei Avot v'Imahot, U'Mevi Geula Livnei B'neihem, L'ma'an Shemo B'Ahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshia U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Abraham ve'ezrat Sarah. Atah gibor le'olam Adonai, mechayei hakol atah rav lehoshia. Mashiv haruach u'morid hagashem, mechalker chaim bechesed, mechayei hakol berahamim rabim. Somech noflim verofei cholim, umatir asurim, umekayem emunato lishenei afar. Michamocha bal gevurot, u'midro melach, melech mimit u'mechayeh, u'matzmiach Yeshua. V'ne'eman atah lechayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai, mechayei hakol. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
Please be seated. And we'll turn in our prayer books to page 253. Page 253. And we turn our attention to those in our community, those in our lives, those who are close to us, who are in need of healing. A healing of body, a healing of spirit. We think of Marcia Spivak and Cheryl Hampson. We think of Tegan Riley as one congregation. And I ask if you are thinking of more who are in need of healing. If you are participating online and want to share their names in the comments below, feel free to do so. And if you have the name of somebody who's in need of healing in your heart and you're here in the sanctuary, feel free to share that name out loud as my eyes meet yours. For all those who we mention out loud, for every single one we mention in our hearts. Together, we pray for healing. We rise now physically, spiritually for our Seder Kriyat HaTorah, for our service for the reading of Torah. Chasadim Al Torah ve'al avodah ve'al gemilut chasadim Al shlosha devarim ha'olam amen Al shlosha devarim ha'olam amen Al shlosha devarim So, we are in Parashat Toldot. Ella is going to be reading from the beginning of Parashat Toldot tomorrow. You thought I was going to say tonight, didn't you? No. Okay, good. But we're a little bit after what Ella's going to be reading. We're going to be in chapter 25, beginning with verse 29. If you're here in the sanctuary, the Plaut commentary, the Plaut Chumash is in front of you. If you're unfamiliar with our prayer books, that would be the bigger, bluer book in your pews. That's on page 174. If you're following along at home, it's still Genesis chapter 25, beginning with verse 29. The numbers don't change. This is a story we know well. Jacob is making stew. Tonight feels like a stew night, doesn't it? Yes. Or like a soup night, right? He's making stew, he's making soup, he's making something with lentils. And Esau comes in from the field famished and says, give me some of that stuff. And Jacob says, well, give me your birthright first. And we have a tendency to look at this as being duplicitous, right? As Jacob is tricking his brother out of something. But if you look at the text, Esau says, what good is a birthright to me? What good is this thing to me? As if he's somehow in on it, as if he knows somehow that Jacob should actually be the one who ends up in charge. And so he gives it up. He gives it up. Ella's going to talk more eloquently about it tomorrow, but I think it is a reminder to us that sometimes when we think that there's an injustice being done, and we're very quick to step in to correct that injustice, that we might not be seeing the full story. We might not be seeing the full dynamic. And we need to be a little more patient and a little more listening with our ears. So that's what we're going to be reading tonight. For our Aliyah, do we have anybody with a birthday in the month of November? Anybody celebrating a birthday in the month of November? All November. I'm not asking which one. But just if you have a November birthday, come on up for the Aliyah. And if you are a new member of the congregation, we'd love to have you come up to the Torah table for the Aliyah. So November birthdays and new members, people who have joined. And since we weren't really able to do new member Shabbat last year, anybody who joined in the last 2 years, come on up. Nobody was born in November? I know Bruce and Linda are new members. Nobody was born in November, really? No Thanksgiving birthdays? Nothing?
I'm not sure how far back you were going to go.
Yeah. Right. A one and a two.
Baruch Adonai Hamborach.
Baruch Adonai Hamborach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamborach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Vayazed Yaakov nazid, vayavo Esav min hasadeh, v'hu ayef. Jacob was making stew, was stewing stew even. And Esau came in from the field exhausted. Vayomer Esav el Yaakov, heliteni na min hadom hazeh, ki ayef anochi. And Esau said to his brother Jacob, hey, give me some of that red stuff because I'm exhausted. Al ken kara shemo Edom. And that's why we call him Edom. Red. Vayomer Yaakov, micha kayom et birchotecha li. Jacob said, sell me your birthright. Vayomer Esav, Esau replied, Hinenochi holech lamut, v'lama zeh li bechora. Look, I'm going to die here. What does it matter if I have a birthright? Vayomer Yaakov, hashava li kayom. Jacob replied, well, swear to me. Vayishba lo v'yimachar et birchato liYaakov. So he swore to him and sold him his birthright, to Jacob. V'Yaakov noten le'Esav lechem ve'nazid adashim. And so Jacob gave him some bread and a stew of lentils. V'yachol v'yesht v'yakom v'yelech v'yebesh Esav et habechorah. And so he ate and he drank and he got up and he left. And so he left behind his birthright.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. We rejoice in you joining our congregation, renewing our congregation, joining the choir, both of you, leaping right in with both feet and really becoming a part of this community as if you have been here the whole time. And as we rejoice in that, we join together in singing She'achianu.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'achianu v'kiyamanu v'hegianu lazman hazeh.
Don't go away yet. Would you take that? And would you
can
take
never
that?
escape.
All right. Yeah. You get props. All right. We rise for Hagbah and Glilah, the lifting up and the dressing of our Sefer Torah, and we'll remain standing as we return our Sefer Torah to the Ark.
V'zot haTorah
Asher sam Moshe livnei b'nei Yisrael al pi Adonai b'yad Moshe. La 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 to it, and all of its supporters are happy. It is a tree of life to those who hold fast to it, and all of its supporters are happy. Shalom, 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 shalom. A quick story. Have you ever seen something so surprising that it distracted you from everything else? Everything going on around you? It was once that this exact thing happened in a town far from here, in another time. There was a rabbi who was leaving his study hall with his students, and they were walking down the street, and suddenly the rabbi stopped dead in his tracks. He had, for whatever reason, looked up. And when he looked up, he saw a tightrope walker. As they were walking down the street, he looked and saw this person walking on what appeared to be the tiniest, thinnest wire, strung between two tall buildings, maybe 3 or 4 stories in the air. The rabbi watched with great attention as the person didn't just walk on this wire, but appeared to dance on this wire, hopping and spinning and moving from one foot to the other. And he was transfixed. to the point where the students started getting a little embarrassed, like, Rabbi, it's a tightrope walker. What's the big deal? The rabbi watched the entire performance, waited for the tightrope walker to climb down, and then approached him and spoke to the tightrope walker quietly. The students gave him his distance to let him have the conversation, and then when it was over and the tightrope walker had collected his prize money and walked away, they walked over to the rabbi and said, "We don't understand. Why was this such a big deal? Why were you watching him so intently? What did you ask him?" And the rabbi explained to them, this tightrope walker walks on a thin, tight wire for payment and for the honor, the prestige that comes from doing these tricks. But I asked him, what was the tightrope walker thinking when he was up there? What was going on in his mind that moment that he was walking on the wire, balancing between the two buildings, suspended quite literally between heaven and earth? The tightrope walker told me, I wasn't thinking about my prize money, and I wasn't thinking about honor. I wasn't really thinking about anything. At that point, all I was thinking about was keeping my balance and getting to the other end. Keeping my balance and getting to the other end. And so it's true for us as well. There are times that what we do has a clear reward, has a clear outcome that we are moving toward, whether it is for our own personal benefit or for the benefit of others. But sometimes in our lives, it is enough to balance and to move toward our destination, to maintain our grip, to be able to stay on that thin wire and move forward. Sometimes getting to the other end is enough. May each of us find our ways through our own personal balancing acts and find our ways to get to our destinations, whereupon may we find the kavod and the joy that is awaiting us. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may this be God's will. We're going to turn back to our prayer books. We're going to turn back to page 282 in our prayer books as we rise for Aleinu L'Shabeach.
Aleinu L'Shabeach La'adon HaKol V'atet Gedula Liyotzei Breshit Shelo Asanu Kigoyei Ha'aratzot Ve'lo Samanu Kimishpachot Ha'adama Shelo Sam Chelkeinu Kahem Ve'goralenu Kechol HaMohonam Va'anachnu Koreim Umishtachavim Umodim Livnei Melech Malchei HaMachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu V'ne'emar V'haya Adonai Lemelech al kol ha'aretz Bayom hahu Yeh Adonai echad U'shemo echad.
We can be seated. And we can turn to page 294. Page 294. However brief may be our time on earth, O God, you endow our fleeting days with abiding worth. If you are in the first 30 days of your mourning, the period of Shaloshim. Whether you are in the sanctuary or you are in the sanctuary of your own home, I invite you to rise at this time. And if you are in the first year of your mourning, I invite you to rise. If on this Shabbat you commemorate a yahrzeit, the anniversary of a loved one's passing, I invite you to rise at this time. And if it is your custom to rise to remember those whom only we can remember, the martyrs of our people, those who have died from this pandemic, those who have died from injustice, I invite you to do so as we join together in Mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah, Bi'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, ba'agalau v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei Shemei Rabbah mevarach le'olam olamei almaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yitalev v'yithalal Shemei d'Kudusha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran bi'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shalom rabba min shamaya, v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. We think of our loved ones whom death has recently taken from us, those who died at the season in years past, and those whom we have drawn into our hearts with our own. We remember Philip Dector, Florence Mitzi Dector, Sylvia Duncan, Edward Eisenhandler, Ida Felix, Jack Goldstein, Mildred Himber, Max Kyle, Morris Lockitch, Cecilia Lukoff, Sue Pulse, Roscoe S. Presley, Ethel Radner, Jerome Rosenberg, Ethel Scher, Marjorie J. Seltzer, Morris Shapiro, Rachel Topkis, and Jacob Henry Topkis. And I would ask if you have a name to add, if you're following along online, to add that to the comments below. And in our sanctuary, I invite you to add that name as I scan across the room. Zichronam livracha, may their memories be a blessing as we say, Amen.
Amen.
Please be seated. Mazel tov again, Ella, to you, to your whole family. Looking forward to celebrating with you tomorrow, having you lead us tomorrow in worship and in study. Tomorrow morning, Torah study at 9:30 for the first time in a long time, in person and online. We're going to be on Zoom, but we're also going to be in person in our boardroom. So you're welcome to join us for that either way. The link, of course, is always on the front page of the website. And then our service at 11 a.m. With Ella leading us, and that will also be both in person and on YouTube and Facebook as this service is as well. Many thanks to our song leader, Dylan Steinberg, our music teacher, Rachel Greenspan, and to our youth choir for coming back and leading us so beautifully. And we're going to turn back to them to lead us in our closing song. We can all rise as we prepare to hear from them sing a song of peace.
You can find the words on page 353. 353. We're getting our ruach together. Shalom Aleinu, Adiva Shalom Aleinu, Adiva Shalom Aleinu, De'al Kula. Adiva Shalom Aleinu, Adiva Shalom Aleinu, Adiva Shalom Aleinu, De'al Kula. Salam Aleinu De'al Kula. Salam, salam. Salam Aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam. Salam, salam. Odiva shalom aleinu.
Shabbat Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.